I would like to also say a big thank you to our e-commerce Nigeria Emerging Professionals Working Group for spotlighting Nigerian heritage through this series of events that they have lined up. This is the second in the series. The first one, I believe, was last year. The preceding video that has been shown also shares with us the state of heritage in Nigeria, in parts of Nigeria, and I think there was also another one that was shown yesterday. But one thing is sure, we've got all this heritage in Nigeria. It's part of who we are. It's at the very foundation of our identity, and we have to work to make sure that we have something to hand over to the next generation. For those who were with us yesterday, our discussion featured on, looked at Nigeria's heritage yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Our guest speaker was Professor Okpoko. Professor Okpoko shared with us his knowledge about trauma sites in Nigeria. This is something that we often do not speak about a lot. The trauma sites in Nigeria that are related to the horrible civil war of the late 60s, that caused so much loss in Nigeria. Over 3 million lives were lost. In sharing with us, he draws our attention to sites such as the Ogbe Osowa Memorial in Asaba, which a lot of people do not know about. We often know about the National Museum at Umuahia, which is the National War Museum. But a lot of people do not know about sites such as the Memorial at Asaba, the Abagana Massacre, the Uli airstrip, which was also central to the efforts during the war, and reminds us that to the same extent as Auschwitz and the Japanese War Memorial are held in great esteem as a reminder of the things that should not be repeated, that we should also keep these memorials in our living memory today, because it is a memorial that attests to the losses, human and material losses of yesterday, that is affecting our today, and that we need to remember for tomorrow so that we do not repeat the mistakes of yesterday. Yesterday, we also shared videos in like manner as we have for today. We also shared videos of palaces from other parts of Nigeria. For instance, the Katamba Palace in Bida, Niger State, Mary Slessor House in Cross River. Mary Slessor is renowned for having stopped certain practices. And then the SCA Museum in Kwara State, the Soapstone Museum. For those who are in Nigeria, if you ever have some time, please go and take a look at the SCA Museum in Kwara State. Today, our session will be looking at, our theme today is the laws and practice of heritage in Nigeria, and what is the role, the status of town planners with us. I hope that we will enjoy the presentation. We have no other than the head of the Town Planning Association in our country, who is also going to give us an exposition on this. And at this point, I will hand over to our moderator, Mr. Sheyi Olagoke. Welcome again, and thank you very much to our panelists for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the welcome remarks, Dr. Ishan. And of course, we are taking off today. You know, we had a wonderful session yesterday. No need to talk so much about that, but then we will need to take some flashbacks and get to remind ourselves of some of the things Professor Okpoko talked about yesterday in the course of this brief discussions and highlights, because I know I'm going to say a little, and I hope Samson and Dr. Ijema will also add a few comments. It's amazing how long for me the Benin wall moats and walls are. 16,000 kilometers. That's quite incredible and amazing. And also it's interesting how apparently inaccessible this site has become. I'm just imagining what someone like me who doesn't live near that place may find attracted to, to want to go there visiting. And then that for me looks like a challenge. I remember a few years back, the Olumo Rock in Abeokuta also had a little challenge for visitors. Not as if we couldn't climb, but then it was quite difficult and challenging, especially for people with disabilities. And after some time, we discovered that it was worked on and it's more accessible to people who are, interested, enthusiasts, and even to foreigners to come and see how it looked like, and they get to know the history of the rock, how important it was to the people who lived in that place many years back when they had crises and all of those tribal and intertribal wars. I figure it may be so appropriate for those in the right position, to work on maybe just make it more properly defined and make it more attractive rather for people, to get to know what it is that locality, that environment has to give to us in terms of tourism and what have you. And also the ledger, for me, it's also wonderful. The cultural practice of the yearly arrangement and rearrangement of the block slags. Yesterday, Professor Opoku talked about how traditional system and then contemporary system can both be merged to properly manage our cultural heritage properties. I can imagine how profound that is. Of course, I can also relate that to what happens in the Osun Grove, where even before it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site, there are some strong sets of taboos that people who live in the vicinity, dare not encroach, dare not go there fishing, dare not go there hunting. And then, there's a way it preserved, the serenity, it preserved the authenticity, it preserved the originality of the site. And I'm amazed that that's also what obtains at ledger. Yes, maybe more needs to be done. I'm not sure it's listed as a national heritage. I know that of Benin Moats and Walls. I know that of the Okpobo King Jaja of Okpobo status. But I try to find out if Ledger, the iron smelting site, is a national heritage, but I'm not able to find that out. The document I saw suggests to me that, in fact, there is no national heritage site in Enugu or Anambra. I think it's in Enugu State, but Samson said it's in Anambra. I'm not sure which of the two is correct.
Could confirm from we could confirm from Dr. Ijema Ojejikwe. She could draw out some key highlights from those sites, Dono College, the King Jaja at Okpobo, and the Benin Moats.
Hello. Yeah, hello everyone. Okay, first I want to correct. Leja is located in Enugu State, not Anambra State.
Sure.
And Dunaka Leja is in Enugu State. Yes, and based on these sites we have seen, we can understand, especially if we look at that of the Benin Moat, we can see that as population is increasing, the demand for land is also increasing. And this is one problem our heritage properties are facing. Our heritage properties, they are tangible manifestations of our indigenous knowledge systems. They are sole drivers of our economic, social, and political activities, especially in Africa. And you can also draw out innovations, scientific innovations from these our heritage and these are monuments and sites. But the challenge we have now is as population begins to increase and Nigeria's population is increasing by 4.3% per annum. The demand for transport and housing has increased. So there is a challenge between the preservation of these heritage sites, these monuments, and physical development. So we can say that because of these sites, we can develop, or we can say that development is not necessary. They are necessary. So town planners have a strong and important role to play in their site analysis plan. So I believe that we can hear from the national president the status and policies that exist, how these things can be preserved, and how we can work with the town planning authorities to make sure that sites like Dunopaleja, when development should get closer to these areas, they will not be defaced or displaced forever. Thank you.
All right. Something.
Yes. I think we can have our presentation. I think Dr. Tamplana Odutsoyin Ayide can take the floor.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you're audible.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
I apologize for not being able to join yesterday, but obviously from Dr. Odiawa's introductory statement, I can say for myself that I missed out, you know. But be that as it may, I think a good place to begin is the purpose of these heritage places. And I, for example, had visited the War Museum in Umuahia. I think that would be about 2018. And one of the things that I took away from there was that the nation missed the opportunity to become industrialized. Because when I saw local artilleries, local armored personnel carriers, local aircrafts made by our own people, I thought if a nation was going to learn from that kind of a heritage site or a museum, it would take off positively. You know, there are times you learn from your pains, and that's what I think is there to learn about some of our heritage places, not just because they are cultural origins, but we must also know that they can help us to tweak our brains and do something better for ourselves and the generations to come. I have a presentation that I already sent in there, so I don't know if it can be screened, so I can go through it. Hello? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Detunji, right? So I'm going to talk on heritage laws and practice, the status of heritage laws in urban planning of cities. And in doing this, I hope the opportunity comes, I may be able to say a few things, my experience when I was Honorable Commissioner for Physical Planning and Urban Development in Lagos State between 2011 and 2015. And then also, one of the things I've been able to do, trying to get back a replica of one of such heritage sites that was demolished in Lagos in 2016. And I think that should help us going forward. Can I have the main slide, please? So I got across these two quotes, which I find very interesting. It says, Steve Berry had said a concerted effort to preserve our heritage is a vital link to our cultural, educational, aesthetic, inspirational, and economic legacies. all of the things that quite literally make us who we are. And just like I said from my experience from visiting the War Museum in Umuahia, these are things that can actually impact our life as a nation. So that's the essence of paying attention or preserving our heritage. And then Miguel de Cervantes says, the knowledge of yourself will preserve you from vanity. What that simply means is, if you have sufficient knowledge of who you are, of your heritage, of your origin, you will be able to focus. That's the essence. Focus takes us away from unnecessary things and helps us to develop as a nation. Can we go ahead, please? So, as a form of introduction, the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners is an association of those who have studied urban planning, or urban and regional planning, depending on what side of the world you studied. Those in Britain call it town planning. But what we're concerned is about the physical development, the arrangement of land uses in such a way as to promote convenient, aesthetic, and economically viable human settlements. That's really the essence of our being here, to create order in the human settlement. And once you don't have order, the only thing you can have is chaos. We've always had chaos because we've not paid attention enough to urban planning. And the goal 11 of Agenda 2020 is on sustainable cities and human communities. And we're hoping that if Nigeria really gets serious, we can do this. So NITP has always supported initiatives of organizations like United Nations on sustainable urban development, like the Habitat 3 conference held in Quito in 2016. We also make it, it's almost become a tradition now to attend every World Urban Forum. The last was in Abu Dhabi, shortly before the COVID lockdown came in 2020. And we've always had takeaways from all of these conferences and international conventions as an institute. And then we try as much as possible to bring some of them to play in our conferences or training programs. So the emphasis here is to understand that cultural heritage is integral to solving challenges of urbanization. We have the cultural, we have places we want to preserve on one hand, and then we are having urbanization owing to the movement of people to cities. Apart from the fact that people are moving to cities, the population through natural birth is also increasing. And the truth about the land resource is that land is fixed, but the population will continue to increase. And the only way to manage what is limited is to plan it. So that's why resolving the issues of cultural heritage and the challenges of urbanization is truly a planning issue. And we will find that internationally, there are laws, there are conventions that exist to protect and preserve heritage properties. But if such conventions, laws, or policies are not localized, if they are not internalized in the local countries themselves, it will really hinder the fulfillment and achievement of those goals. So it's not enough for us as a nation to append our signatures to international conventions. What really matters is for us to be back here and localize them, implement them so that we can achieve the required results. I have the next slide, please. The next slide. Thank you. So international provisions for heritage preservation, we learned from the UNESCO 1972 Article 5A recommendations, which says to adopt a general policy which aims to give the cultural and natural heritage a function in the life of the people and to integrate the protection of heritage into comprehensive planning program. What we can deduce from this is that this article has actually positioned preservation of heritage sites within the confines of comprehensive planning. So if we must talk about development within the city system or within any human settlement system for that matter, we must be talking about the planning of that human settlement. And a few, well, it's turned to years now, about 2019, we were in Bende, which is a local government in Abia State, and we were preparing the master plan for Bende town itself. And we had to study some historical areas there, which for us as urban planners, we identified as places that could be preserved for heritage purposes and also take advantage of them for tourism. So this article just supports that. And then, of course, the International Labour Organization Convention Article 2 of 2007 says governments shall have the responsibility for developing with the participation of indigenous and tribal peoples concerned and coordinate systematic action to protect the rights of these peoples and to guarantee respect for their integrity. This article puts responsibility on government. And I mean, for us in Nigeria, you know how government does quite a lot of things, holding the resources of the Commonwealth on our behalf. But there's also something interesting in this statement. It says with the participation of the indigenous and tribal peoples concerned. So this is talking about inclusiveness. So it is difficult to actually go about preservation of heritage sites or cultural places without involving those who are really concerned. And then in Article 4, subsection 1, it says, special measures shall be adopted as appropriate for safeguarding persons, institutions, properties, cultures, and environment of the people's concerned. These are just conditions that make preservation possible. And if we do not take time to go through them and try to follow the process, it might be difficult as we are having right now. Can I have the next slide? And then the International Council on Monuments and Sites, the Washington Charter for protecting the ancient urban centers of the city and other historical landscapes. This is just a background that this is what is done internationally, So if they are done internationally, what are we doing locally? So that takes us to the next slide. Local laws relating heritage preservation and urban planning practice. So I'm trying to relate urban planning practice with preservation of heritage sites. I think the first document we need to look to consider is the Nigerian Urban and Regional Planning Law. This came as a decree, actually in 1992, Decree 88 of 1992. And sections 64 to 69 particularly speak to heritage and historic sites, talking about the compilation of lists of places of interest, cultural sites, talked about consultation with organizations and people with special knowledge, because this assignment is not as general as we may think. It has people whose interest lies in that. And if people are not interested, they will abuse it, because once they don't know about it, it will just be left. And I think that's what is happening with many of the good programs that we have. So, but it goes further in sections 70 and 71 to define what the offenses will be. That is stating whether what will happen if you just go and destroy a heritage site, or you demolish one, just like the one that happened in Lagos in 2016. There is this heritage building called Ilojoba, opposite the Tinubu Square in Lagos. It was demolished in 2016. And my experience as Honorable Commissioner was that while I was in office, I left office in 2015, but before I left office, I recollect that one of my agencies, the Building Control Agency, had served the family with a notice because the building was actually deteriorating. It was in a state of disrepair. And Lagos State had a law then that if a building collapses and it is investigated that the owner, the fault lies in the owner, the whole of that site will be confiscated by the government, it will be taken over. So I recollect that agency advising the family to do something about that building. I recollect also that the family made moves to talk to the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, who declared that building as a national monument since 1956. But since 1956, nothing has been done. Nobody has put in any dime, any naira for the maintenance of that building. So that's my experience. But 2016, after I had left office, I think for some reason, didn't want the building to collapse and for government to take. So it's demolished. Well, I was later invited in 2018, and I came in to kind of broker the truce between the National Commission for Museums and Monuments and the family. Although the building is gone, but fortunately, there was a documentation of every bit. Levels where a memorandum of understanding endorsed by the and the family. Secondly, the Museum and Monuments Commission has a 242 was a decrease since 1979. And the objective is that all heritage property is destroyed. In Article 2007, said government wants. So the Museum and Monuments is an agent, or is an agency of government. So this is just establishing the role that government has to play. Are you hearing me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. But
yes, sir, we can hear you.
It seems your connection, it seems your bandwidth is low. So I want to suggest maybe you turn off your video so that it can increase the strength of your bandwidth so that we could hear.
No, it's actually not low. Somebody was trying to call me. Somebody was trying to call me. Okay. I was trying to switch off.
Okay.
So, so we can go to the next slide. Next slide. Yes. So on its own, the NITP itself, the NITP itself has been things in preservation of cultural heritage. And in the conference of 2020, we particularly carried this in our communique, observing that urbanization has posed serious continuous existence. While fiscal planning laws and institutions have paid little attention to the protection and integration of cultural heritage, the fiscal plans and development in Nigerian cities. Now, let me say this. If we do not plan our, not even recognize that we have cultural places that need to be preserved. And I cite an example of Lagos State. Lagos State has a 55-year-old, which is a report of historical monuments preservation. This document was published in June 1986. That's 35. Came because there was a master plan that was prepared in 1980. And that master plan made reference, it identified heritage sites. So, and it was for the, in terms of, the government realized that it had to set up a committee to make a study. So the document that was produced by that committee was published in 1986. So NITP went further to advise or recommend that government should review enabling laws to mandate cultural heritage impact assessment as prelude to the grant of development permits in certain places. I know a few of the heritage places in Lagos gone, and there was no documentation. For example, in the document I'm talking about, there is what used to be called Cole's Castle. There is a man who was called Cole then, C-O-L-E. He had a castle, and up till 1987, when I lived in that environment where the castle was located, the thing was there. And it was a beautiful pedestal to look at from the third mainland bridge of Lagos State. But now it's
what?
Seeing heritage sites, part of buildings listed in this document that have been demolished. So government must wake up to ensure that these things happen. And then, of course, there has to be more collaboration between the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners and the National Commission for Museums and Monuments to strengthen the legal basis for protection of heritage assets through inclusive policies in line with world's best practice. I'd like to say that the efforts that I led was in collaboration with the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. But I want to say that this should not be a one-time kind of relationship. It has to be a continuous relationship between the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners and the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. Can I have the next slide? Hello? Okay. What's from NITP recommendations? The first is the preservation of the historic fabric of ancient Nigerian cities and communities. It's important to keep these things. It's even important for the world to know what we have. And in doing this, I think there is need for a lot of education. I recollect when we went to Bende, but for the fact that the Eze was an enlightened person, the youths not going to allow us to even, and yet nobody knows that they have all these things. So to be able to preserve them, we also need education to carry the indigenous and tribal people, according to what the ILO article says. And then secondly, there is need for promotion of documentation that will provide a body of knowledge and understanding of the history, as well as present conditions of the ancient Nigerian cities and communities to any plan. Now, the way Nigeria is developing, the way our population is increasing without control, I cannot guarantee how much land we will continue to encroach on if we do not plan. Now, we may have to learn from what other countries have done, because you might really have a challenge for space. So, and the country that comes to my mind is Singapore. Singapore has a land that is 1/5 of the size of Lagos State. And one of the things they did, or one of the things they realized, was that they did not have sufficient land and they needed to develop. They initially were developing ground and first floor buildings like we were doing, but it was not going to answer to their needs, because part of their needs was a policy that said no Singaporean must be homeless. And that's why they have developed vertically. That's why they have high-rise buildings. But for them to have those high-rise buildings, they had to pull all of those 2 floors together and begin to develop. They have what they call the URA, I think, Urban Redevelopment Agency. If you get into that agency, everything you need to know about the history of development in Singapore is there. So you may not be able to see physically those buildings anymore, but they have them in videos, animated. They have them in pictures that they are real. You know, they are real and very educative. So documentation requires acquiring all of the relevant maps, pulling of all skills together, the archaeologists, the historians, the surveyors, the architects, the engineers. One of the good things we had that helped the discussions on the replacement or constructing a replica of the Lojoba was that a firm of architects had taken physical measurements of that building, and they have everything documented. We must begin to identify sites and then take records, document them, because we may not always have them physically. So it will require the preservation of indigenous knowledge systems in the design of our fabric. So it is what we document that will educate the way that we go forward. Next slide, please. So what are the major challenges for us to preserve our cultural places? Number one, non-domesticated. One of the things I discovered as national president was that an advocacy visit. I've been on a nationwide tour since March. So in 5 months, I have covered about 19 states now. And in November, I hope to go through 4 states again. So I'm just trying to say, I found out that a lot of states have not domesticated the law. So when you don't have a law, it means you are lawless. Second challenge is deriving from the first. So it means there's inadequate attention to urban planning. So that means inadequate attention to order, creating order, having a convenient, having a livable environment. The third challenge is the failure to invest in the preparation of physical development plans. In Lagos State, that heritage sites were identified. So if states are not preparing plans, what studies will be conducted? Because before plans are made, studies are conducted. And it's those studies that reveal the resources that we have. The next is the failure to implement the few available physical development plans. Like I said in Lagos, it was in the process of attempting to implement the provisions of the master plan that they needed to conduct more detailed studies on the heritage and monument sites, which was what gave birth to the document I'm referring about. So it's not sufficient to just prepare those plans. It's also important to implement them. So the challenge is that there's no level awareness of heritage preservation. You know, while we were working on Ilojoba, and with the benefit of this document, I decided to visit a few of those buildings that were listed in this document to find out, even if those families were aware that their buildings were listed, none of them knew. None of them knew. Or maybe the generation that knew had died and this message was not passed. So there's a low level of awareness of heritage preservation. So there's also the challenge of policies and standards to guide development. They are not there. So if those policies and standards that was the next slide. Am I off? Hello?
No, you are not.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So going forward, I think this must be my last slide. The next slide after this should be thank you. There will be need for continuous engagement. So this is a discussion that must continue. It can't end here. When Dr. started in her introductory remarks, she said one was held last year. I think between now and last year, that's 12 months. Maybe we need to do it more frequently, because when there is a large volume of ignorance, then there really must be a large volume of knowledge. So this continuous engagement. The next is that there must be concerted effort to create. I recognize that a hungry man is an angry man. I understand that people don't want to give attention to issues like this. I remember when Fashola became governor and he started to plant landscapes, started to plant greens. People were saying, na landscape we go chop. But in a few months, they were saying, this thing is beautiful. The same thing. When we begin to talk of heritage places, they might begin to say, now that we go chop. But if we begin to show them some of the things we have discovered and how we can take advantage of some of these things and turn them into tourism sites, and if government is able to support tourism, creating accessibility. Because one of the things that sites like this thrive upon is accessibility. You know, if it's not accessible, nobody wants to go there. If there's no security, nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to lose his life because he wants to come and see where Ilojoba is in Lagos or where some stones are in Enugu State. So government we must have these concerted efforts, creating awareness among the stakeholders, and government is part of those stakeholders. The third is that the advocacy campaign on urban planning needs to permeate nooks and crannies of Nigeria. I'm saying urban planning because heritage sites are components of human settlements. And if we're talking about that, then it's a planning issue. The next point is collaboration of the Nigerian Institute of Town and the mission and monument. It has become more necessary. We really must engage more. And then going forward, programs like this must continue. We must involve more people. I was looking at it, only 27 people on this platform, or maybe less if we remove the hosts and organizers. So it means that there's really a low level awareness. So government must take leadership in this drive to preserve our collective heritage. People always ask me why I'm saying government. Government has taken all of the resources to itself. Government has the power of eminent domain. Government is the one that can declare a whole city as an acquisition. But the moment it is doing that, it also has the responsibility to take charge of management. So some of the things we are talking about are all issue. Does not provide resources for that or provide the enabling environment for other people to participate, then it's going to be very difficult to move forward. I want to thank you for the opportunity you have given me to make this presentation. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Tom Plana Inde. It's a very sincere, a very profound presentation you just made. I thank you so much on behalf of the organizers. And most also importantly, we want to say thank you for the role you played when you were in office as, as a honorable commissioner and also as a president of the NITP in the country. I personally hope that one day we will not hear that the Shita Bay Mosque or any other iconic building of heritage significance in Lagos suffers the same fate as the Ilojoba. Once again, I say thank you, sir. I wait for questions from participants, but then as I do that, I have one or two questions personally written that I like to ask you, sir. I like to know how well the NITP is doing to make room for historical areas in our urban centers, our towns and cities. For example, in Oshogbo, where I live, of course, we all know the Oshun Group. We know there is an area, Odiolowo, an area where there are a lot of Afro-Brazilian built structures. Unfortunately, most of them are being demolished on a daily basis, to make room for newer and more contemporary buildings. I'm also sure that's the case in most other towns and cities. The case of those iconic buildings also in Calabar, the Efik area particularly. I'd like to know if the NITP, because, like we have commercial areas, we have religious areas, we have different areas in our urban planning. I'd like to know if it's appropriate for the NITP to also make a case for historical zones and areas where before any development or any maintenance projects are done. You talked about the cultural heritage impact assessments, how we can make that a reality maybe in our towns and cities, and by that and encouraging cultural heritage practice and management in Nigeria.
question?
Sir?
Is that the only question? Can I go ahead?
Yes, I can go ahead.
Okay. You know, like I said, I've been on a nationwide tour, and this is as a result of my discovery of the low level of generally. So it's not just about heritage places. Now, it will not be sufficient to concentrate just on heritage places. We must take it at, we must adopt a holistic approach, you know, because heritage places are also part of a city system, a human settlement system. So realize that we need to plan our city. We can't develop anyhow. That's why those buildings are being demolished. It's because we think we can develop anyhow. So the advocacy, that part that has been included in the advocacy. So, and I think what NITP will do is to impress this on our local chapters, that they must continue to sound this as a kind of campaign. You know, I have told chapter chairmen that whatever the NITP is doing is only a template for them to go and repeat in every local government, every word of their state. And I think if we're able to do that, we should be able to make some improvement.
Thank you so much for that response. I also have a question from here, which from Dr. Ijoma. You know, normally when we design buildings and we take them for approvals, we are normally asked to produce our EIA, environmental impact assessment. Could it also be appropriate for the CHIA to be, you know, one of the prerequisites to gain building approvals before construction or renovation, sir?
Now, you know that it is not everywhere that has cultural heritage value. But there are certain places, okay, let me give you an example. You know, Lagos State.
Yes, sir.
A system that can consider that. So that I'll give you, okay. For example, if you want to do something in some parts of Lagos Island alone, they will also ask you to go to the Urban Renewal Agency, because it's a zone of urban renewal. There must be clearance. So it's the same thing. So once we have those sites already, it's discovered that it is within that zone, oh, you have to present a cultural heritage impact assessment. So that is supposed to be a given, you know, but the reason most states can't do it is that they don't even have the maps on the plans they are approving. They don't even have maps. And that's very absurd. That's unheard of. There are states in Nigeria that are approving buildings and they can't tell you that this is the spot on which this building is. And that's the sad one. So it's the reason we have to do this advocacy. So let's come back from Stone Age to the digital age. I hope I've satisfied that question.
Very well, sir. Before I give the floor to Dr. Ishan, I have one more question here, sir. And when you talked about the role you played in, you know, interfacing between the NCMM and the landowners of the Lojoba, did you do that in your personal capacity, or was it that the NCMN and the NITP have a collaboration?
Okay, the truth is that it was personal. Let me just say it was coincidental. In the first instance, I didn't know that that building was demolished. I didn't know. But how I got to know was that after it was demolished in 2016, there was a stalemate because the family itself had a dispute. So they were divided into two. So when one faction of the family demolished the house, another faction of the family got in touch with National Commission for Museums and Monuments that your monument has been demolished. Though National Commission for Museums and Monuments got involved with got in touch with the governor of Lagos State, and a truck of armed policemen was stationed there. That truck has been there since 2016, so nobody could move into the site. So, and as they were looking for who to help them solve this problem, they decided to approach the Oba of Lagos as a paramount ruler, that he should be able to intervene. They were looking for who could lead them to the palace. So while their lawyer was discussing with my own lawyer friend, my lawyer friend told them that, oh, I know somebody who can help you see KBSC. But by the time they got in touch with me, I discovered that it was a monument. It was a monument. If they had gone to any other person, they may not have achieved this same result. In fact, they may not get this result. But because they came to me, I had been in government, had been a regulator, had known what had happened to that building when I was in office, and I also have access to Lagos State reports on historical monuments preservation. So it was coincidental, but it was also very value adding for them. But I have seen that it is, although it is coincidental, but it cannot be taken for granted. As a matter of fact, I'm in discussion already with another stakeholder in the construction industry, how we will now begin to look at such structure report and then discussing with the National Commission for Museums and Monuments and begin to look at how we can strengthen them and preserve them for the future generation. That's
Thank you so much.
That's my response.
I'd like to yield the floor to Dr. Nshaw to ask a question before I ask the last question from my side here. Dr. Nshaw.
Thank you very much, moderator. Town Planner Inde, thank you so much for such an expose. I think one thing that struck me, I mean, you come from a background of having been in government, and now you're on the advocacy side on the professional association, as the head of a professional association. One thing that struck me in your presentation was that slide that you presented on the NCMM legislation, the town planning legislation, and the impact assessment legislation. There are overlaps, there are intersections, but what we often see is that everybody's in a silo. And what this causes is that ultimately it is the environment, the built sector, the cultural heritage sector that suffers, because these silos are not speaking to each other about what they have in common. On the professional side, we have the Association for Environmental Impact Assessment of Nigeria. We have the association, the institute that you lead, and then we have e-commerce. So we have on both sides, we have, complementarity. This work is not going to be a work for just government, because we are also aware of the limitations in terms of resources. So my question to you would be, how do you see the work on cultural heritage preservation going forward? From your perspective and your experience, you have also pointed out something. Not every site or not every development requires an impact assessment to be carried out. As someone who has been in government, you know what it is also for governments to perceive that there is an impediment to the development process. So the multiplication of the permitting process could be perceived by lawmakers also as, putting a brake in development. So how do we address this common interest in a way that does not affect development? Because development can be, it can be an opportunity as much as it is a threat. So how do we bring together all these intersections between the heritage, town planning, and impact assessment sectors in a way that is efficient and responds to all the objectives of the various sectors? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Doc. One of the things that I realized, let me say, by the way, those 4 years I spent were just my 4 years in government. I had not been in government before. I'd been a private sector person all my life. I run my consultancy as an urban planner. So I was actually invited into government as a professional. And because politics is not my career, and completion of my assignment under the Fashola administration, I went back to practice. I also had the privilege of writing my memoirs in office, which I called Service with a Difference. And one of the things I observed was the penchant for government agencies, ministries, departments to operate in silos. And that's the way we also operate as Nigerians. We hardly live as a community. We prefer to live as individuals. That's why collective resources always get destroyed faster than individual resources. The only way to do this is first to change our mindset that something belongs to all of us, and therefore all of us must take care of it. So we have to build the community spirit. That is re-education. That is complete re-education. Secondly, I also come from the background of someone who I was chairman, Association of Professional Bodies of Nigeria in Lagos State before I joined government. Now, one of the things I used to say to the professionals is that all professions are like the 5 fingers of a hand. If you think one is not important, then cut it off. And it is the day that you have need for it that you know that you have made a grave error. So all of us are important. Those in the culture are important. Those in education are important. Those in built industry are important. Those who are in the finance sector are important. What we must understand are the roles that every one of us have to play. We are playing roles, and it requires us to be talking, engaging one another from time to time. If we don't do this engagement, we won't achieve it. So the beginning part of it is to engage. And that's why I said that this discussion has to continue. This program, I'm expecting that it won't be 1 year after another, we'll have another. We should be able to have things like this, call ourselves to conferences so that we can relate. The truth is, the progress of Nigerians will really lie in its professionals. And it is to the extent that we're able to agree that the nation will develop. And that's when we'll be able to preserve our sites or have documentation that will make us remember what those sites were, what we use them for, and what we have gained from having them. Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much, sir. We are so much happy to have you around and to give us this insight. Then the last question Dr. Sean asked, and your response to it kind of answered the question I was going to ask, which had to do with
Okay.
The role of the local government in ensuring that we give proper attention to cultural heritage sites and properties. And you just said, all of us have to take it as a collective, we don't need to share responsibilities and, or maybe you have some other things to say to that, sir? How the local government can be co-opted, giving them a sense of responsibility. Of course, for example, when we want to go for building plan approvals, there are some we need to do at the local government level, and there are some we do at the state government level. Do you think also the local government has roles to play, especially in the CHIA that you mentioned in your presentation?
The truth is that every development actually takes place locally. They don't take place federally or state, they take place locally. But what we need to do is establish our structure very well. There are certain responsibilities now that lie in the state government, things that local government should do. Local government, for example, supposed to take care of refuse, but in many states now, they said they have asked the state government to do it on their behalf. Local government is supposed to collect tenement rates. They say, okay, we have asked the state government to collect on our behalf. So a lot of things are modeled up. I'm going to ask us to be a little bit cautious. Let's even see where our constitutional amendments and reviews are going. Because some of these things also affect the way we operate, because there must be a legal basis for how we operate. But as professionals really don't need laws to be able to perform efficiently. It doesn't stop us from engaging, it doesn't stop us from doing advocacy, it doesn't stop us from talking with one another. Let's begin with that while we begin to sort out legal issues, because there are things that don't need the legal perspective before you can structure your things, and when the legal perspective is established, then you can begin to cross the T's and dot the I's. That's what I would just advise. But since development takes place locally, we also have to carry the local government along with us. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. Once again, we are grateful to have you with us. I have a comment here from Maria Jose de Freitas before, and I'll read that shortly, and I'll call Dr. Toki to give us the closing remarks afterwards. Yeah, she says it is always important to have an holistic view and a perspective following an whole historic urban landscape approach as recommended by the UNESCO. Thank you so much for this comment, Maria. Dr. Toki, please would like to have your remarks.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. I would like to thank everybody for all their contributions. And my little takeaway from all of this, was, issues on master plans, which I find is quite lacking across Nigeria. And as the Scotland said quite rightly, sir, that legal frameworks, the roles of local, federal, laws need to take joint action on how we restore, how we preserve, how we improve conditions of our sites. And documentation is really a big factor when it comes to conservation areas. It's one of those things that really throw me off, that we do not have development plans, we do not have discussions on how cultural landscapes are actually conserved, which is quite irritating, because especially when you are trying to talk about what's happening internationally and you're trying to localize those ideas, we've already had all these things in place, especially when we had forest groves. There were already conservation areas in place for centuries, and how we have not gone beyond that is beyond me. And so I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the organizers for this edition, day 2 for Heritage NAIJA 2.0. The theme again was complex past, diverse futures. And to our main discussants, thank you so much for all your insights you have given us tonight. I said tonight, sorry, it's still dark out there for me, so I'm in that space at the moment. Mr. Olutoyin Ayinde, thank you so much. Thank you to all the moderators and Architect Shim Olagoke, you did a fantastic job. And to all the panelists, the people who asked questions, very, very, very insightful. I do hope that we can take it beyond today. Again, heritage laws and practice, the status of heritage laws in urban planning of Nigerian cities, and a big congratulations to all the organizers, and well done. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for attending our event today. The event will continue tomorrow. Complex past, diverse futures of Nigeria's heritage in changing climate. Do keep it with us, same time, 10 a.m. Nigerian time, on this same link that we used to log in. Thank you everyone from the Shared Build Heritage International Scientific Committee. I could see the members here who faithfully waited to the end. Then we also had our support from our mother body, Mr. Adiolas Abdul, the ECOMOS president for Nigeria, Dr. Ishalusen, the vice president, Toki, everybody, and the Emerging Professionals Working Group of ECOMOS Nigeria. We all thank you very much. As we have been charged, the conversation continues about the Lodger Bar and everything. Let's keep on, let's go into our private corners and be the apostles from the charge given to us. See you tomorrow, same time, same link. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.